Welcome to Japan Seikatsu. I'm Ian. Today, let's discuss the topic of am I too old to actualize my Japan dream? As always, please be sure to click like and subscribe. Let's get started. I get this question often, so I wanted to address it, and it comes at me from many different forms, but it's essentially the same question, and it's, am I too old? Have I missed the boat? Is it too late for me to try for the JET program? Is it too late for me to teach English in Japan? Is it too late for me to try to move to Japan, to actualize my Japan dream? And in every single instance that I have received this question, my response has always been, no, it is not too late. If you're still alive, you can still actualize your Japan dream. You're still on this planet. If you have something you want to do, by all means, go for it. So, as some brief background, I moved to Japan to teach English on the JET program when I was 25 years old. So I had been working 3 years out of undergraduate, and I turned 26 a few months into the JET program. When I was on the JET program, there was other JETs that were in their late 20s and also in their 30s, and some in their 40s. So I had a JET that joined who was around 36, 37, and he had actually done JET earlier in life, then went back to his home country, had gotten married. He married a Japanese lady, they started a family, and he applied to JET and got in again and did the program. And now, this was 2012, he's still living in that same town. He's a full-time teacher now, so no longer in the JET program, but became a teacher, and has proven anyone that thinks you need to be 20 years old to do the JET program that's just not true. And beyond teaching English, there's so many examples that I have seen of people making that move later in life. I have a very good friend who's in his late 30s and works for a Japanese company in the United States, and they will be moving him over to Japan, it looks like, in next year. So here's an example of somebody who's mid-career, has developed a lot of skill sets that are going to be beneficial to the business in Japan as they continue to try to internationalize, and as a result, they'll be bringing him as an expat to live in Japan and work for the company. The company that I work at, which is based in Tokyo, I remember we had an executive come over who was in her 40s that moved from the UK to Tokyo. So I have seen this time and time again, people actualizing their Japan dreams long after they've turned 20 or 21 years old. And age, it really is relative, and it's hard for us to recognize it. I think the older we get, the more we recognize it. I clearly remember when I was in college, my younger brother, he went from 10 years old to 11 years old, and I called him wishing him a happy birthday, and I asked him how he felt about becoming 11, and he was a little bit sad. That he said he was feeling that he was getting a bit older. I was just trying to emphasize to him that, buddy, you're 11 years old. You're still a young guy. But it just goes to show, that we all have this. As we get older, we all think that we're getting older. And I was feeling the same way he was feeling, and I was in my young 20s, and now here I am in my 30s, and I think, I was a baby at that age. I remember one time I was staying with my grandmother at her house, and she kept telling me about these wonderful new couple, her neighbors, this wonderful young couple that had moved in, and how lovely they were, and then one day, like a week later, I saw them coming out of the house, and they were late 50s, early 60s, but to my grandmother, who was early 80s at the time, they were a young couple. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They played tennis, and they were mobile, and they had their health. So age really is relative. I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. There's no shortage of examples of people operating at very high levels at all ages. So there's a very famous debate, the 1984 U.S. presidential debate, and it was Ronald Reagan, and he was getting older. He was in his young 70s at the time, and the moderator basically asked him, "Are you, in more or less, are you too old to be president?" And I will cut to the clip, but his response is brilliant, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. So take a look.
Mr. President, I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
If we can all take that attitude that President Ronald Reagan had, I think we'll all be much better for it. Let's be grateful for the time that we have, and let's keep things in perspective, which is almost nobody has life figured out at age 20 or age 21. We start our journeys, we try different things, we see what we like, and we're evolving. And it's fine to discover at 25 or 30 or 35 or 40 or 45, 50, something that excites you, and to start moving in that direction. And that applies to Japan just as it does to any other industry. So to all of the people that have asked that question, am I too old? My response is no, you're not too old. There are lots of people in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and beyond that are teaching English in Japan. I've done a lot of videos on grad school in Japan, specifically MBAs, but you'll find that the average MBA student in Japan is mid-30s. It's in the 20s in the US. And so it is never too late to get started. The only thing I would say about age is if you can try to use this natural feeling we have of getting older, of time being limited, and use that as a positive catalyst. So when I was 25, going on 26, I felt that if I don't make this leap now, I may never make this leap. If I don't apply to the JET program, if I don't move to Japan now, then I may not ever do it. And so it caused me to jump, and I went for it. And I'm so happy that I did, because it changed my life. It was the beginning of my Japan journey. But part of that ticking clock was what gave me the fuel to make that change and take some action. So you can use this feeling that we have as a positive fuel to make change, but don't allow this feeling of getting older to dim your prospects or make you feel that something's impossible. If you want to do it, go for it. Also, there's a few interesting stories that I've come across that I personally found inspiring. One of them was my Japanese language teacher in college, and her dream was to live overseas and to teach Japanese. So she was living in rural Japan, and she was a kindergarten teacher, and she was in her 20s and then in her 30s trying to become proficient at English. She tried many different things. She was trying to learn French, and then she was trying to learn English, and she was trying to learn Spanish. And the dream for her was to one day be teaching at the university level. And you can imagine there's probably some people that would observe somebody in their 30s teaching at a kindergarten in rural Japan and say that dream is not realistic. Nonetheless, she saved her money. She went to the U.S., she went to grad school there, and she ultimately became a Japanese language teacher. And I took her for my courses, and she was an excellent teacher. When I met her, she had been teaching for decades, and I didn't know that the background story. But when she told me, it was quite inspiring. And there's many stories like that. I had another friend whose father was a pharmacist, and then decided he wanted to become a doctor in his 40s. So he'd already gone to pharmaceutical school. He'd been working as a pharmacist. He still had debt from getting school to be a pharmacist. Nonetheless, he wanted to become a doctor. And so he went to medical school and became a doctor and did that for the rest of his career. He just retired. But that was a major career change that he made mid-career. I've got another friend whose father changed jobs from the finance industry to becoming a doctor in his 40s. So you'll see many, many stories like this, and I hope that you take inspiration from that. Well, as always, thank you for your time. Please do put in the comments section any questions that you have. I'm very curious what you think about this topic, this feeling that many of us have. Am I too old? How have you overcome that in your life? And as always, don't forget, click like and subscribe. Take care.